I'm currently a sophomore at the U, and I'm a peer coach. And today we're going to be doing a presentation on resumes and cover letters.
Good afternoon. My name is John Wetzel, and I'm a career coach here in CLA Career Services. And I'm echoing what Mara said. It's Resumes and Cover Letters 101. So thanks for joining us.
Awesome. I think we can get started.
Okay. How do I go to the next slide?
Right there.
Okay. So we're going to be talking about two different things, professional development and then connecting with employers. So the professional development part will include Handshake, LinkedIn, personal statements, informational interviews, and exploring majors and careers. And these are the kinds of things that CLA Career Services does. Our office is 411 Brunix Hall. I affectionately refer to this building as the sexiest building on campus, and I hope you will not be a stranger as you are using our services. Connecting with employers is the second part of what we do in CLA Career Services. Some of you may have been to the career fair that was held on the 28th of February in Huntington Bank Stadium and McNamara Alumni Center. It was for all 5 campuses of the university, and we had 181 employers there for the 5-hour period. We also do an awful lot of interview preparation. In fact, today I had 2 appointments with students who were preparing for interviews that they will have early next week. So let's go on to the next resume building, and I'm going to turn that over to Mara.
All right, so the bulk of what we'll be talking about today is resume buildings. Some of you might have resumes, totally fine if you don't, but resumes are super important to help you communicate your skills, experiences for employers. Most job and internship applications will require a resume or a CV, and so it's really important that you make sure that your resume is up to par. So some of the general formatting for how a resume looks is generally you want to keep your font size between 10 to 12 points, except for your name or header section. You want to make sure that there's a good balance of text and white space. So you don't want to have half of your page blank, but also it shouldn't be condensed with text similar to like an essay or something. You want to balance that space out. And then just keeping a clean, consistent general format for your resume. First bat, you want to make sure that it looks clean because most employers, if they look at a resume, it's difficult to read. There's too much white space. There's not enough white space. They're not really going to look at it too much because it's just generally hard to look at. And then another thing is just making sure that it's 1 page for undergrads. Typically, you want to see 2 pages once you've gotten out of college and you've gotten, job experiences as well. But generally for undergrads, you want to keep your resume just to 1 page. Color, most employers like to see a bland resume. We typically avoid telling students to put color in the resumes, but if you're a graphic design or like an art major, that might look a little bit different for you. But generally you want to keep it minimal and just make sure that you're communicating your experiences very well. So we have, so if your resume is not visually appealing, employers are not gonna want to look at your resume any like more, just because if you can't like make your resume look good off that, it kind of gives a bad first impression. So some of the key sections on your resume is generally going to be your header. With that, it's going to be your name in bold with the big text. That's the most important thing that an employer should know. And then under that, you want to have, your name, your contact information, generally like your city and state, so they can know where you're located for the job. Some jobs might require you to be located in the States. Others might be open to relocation. So that's important for an employer to know. When it comes to your contact information, you want to use your number. You could use your U of M email or a personal one, just one that you're going to be on top of, you're going to check, as well as I like to recommend people to add their LinkedIn or any like technical portfolios onto their header as well. Some of the other sections of a resume is you definitely want to have your education experience. So that it consists of the university you attend, the college, your major, minors, and any other relevant academic achievements that you have, as well as like your GPA generally fits over like a 3.2. Some other optional sections that you may add into your resume are a project section. If you have a more technical major or if you do more project-based assignments, that can be great to add because it shows employers what you're capable of doing, as well as the skills section. It should reflect what's on your resume. It just kind of helps employers understand what are some of the concrete or technical skills that you have, and as well as employers can use like applicant tracking systems, so ATS, and so those are good to add onto there so it can pick those up and show that you're a qualified candidate. Any relevant presentations or research you may do, as well as activities. Being involved in school while being a full-time student is definitely a great experience to have. And having a resume can, just overall show all of your experience and show that you're a well-rounded individual. So we're going to be talking about what your header should consist of. So the format is generally going to be your first name and last name. Some employers might require you to have your legal name on your resume. So you want to make sure you pay attention to those requirements in case you use a preferred name. And then this order can be optional, just depends on your preference, but you definitely want to have your phone number, email, your city and state. There's no need to add your full address, pronouns if you're comfortable, and then a link to your LinkedIn or portfolio. If you're headed towards your junior and senior year, I would just be mindful of the email that you add onto there because after you graduate, you don't have access to your U of M email. And sometimes employers like to keep track of emails of past applicants. So definitely be mindful for that if you're upper level. For your education section, this is the general format that we recommend people. So you want to have University of Minnesota, comma, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota, a Bachelor of Arts, Science, BIS if that's relevant, and then your anticipated graduation date. That's pretty common, or it's required for you to have your graduation date on there just because some roles might require you to be a sophomore, junior, or senior. So if they don't know what year you are, they might just throw out your resume. Any relevant minors, you can add your GPA. Generally, if it's over 3.0, you want to add that there. And then other academic achievements. So if you've made the Dean list, some people are like Wallen Scholars, PES, any other academic achievements, those are great to add under your education experience. We touched on this earlier, but just some relevant sections to add onto your resume could be study abroad, volunteer experience, internship experience is huge, but not every student has that. So you can kind of fill up your resume with other experiences that you have. So research, work experience. A lot of people can kind of shy away from adding their customer service jobs or just, work study jobs that they may have. But there's a lot of transferable skills that exist within those experiences that you may be using in your future job. So it's always great to have that there. Any campus or community involvement, showing that you're involved and that you have leadership roles is huge to add to a resume. Leadership experience, and then again, project experience. So there's lots of different experiences that you can have. It's definitely not necessary to add all of them, but I would just choose the ones that are most important to you, that are also most relevant to the job, and add those onto your resume. So to talk a little bit more what an experience section looks like, you generally want to have the name of the institution, where it's located, how long you worked there, and what your title was. So you want to kind of give a description on what exactly you did. So let's say, for example, I'm a peer coach at the University of Minnesota. And so I would say, I help with presentations. I help people with like the resume and cover letters. On average, within the school year, I probably help around 20 to 30 students. Just kind of quantify what exactly you did and the achievements that you have within your role. A good way to kind of work on this bullet point and something I like to do is I write down my role and I just kind of word dump absolutely like everything I've done, and then I kind of like to highlight some of the key achievements within that and add that onto your resume. And for just kind of a note on like what your bullet points should look like, a good bullet point is going to start out with an action verb. So the skill that you used or gained, the details of what exactly you did, and the result for what happened. So for example, that may look like, I created a 20-page training manual from scratch for new hires in the marketing department to ease the transition of an entering company. Or another one could be, maintain a 97% customer satisfaction rate as a customer care representative. One thing you might notice with both of those statements is that they quantify your experience, and they're, if an employer is looking at it, they can be like, oh wow, they created a 20-page training manual, or they maintain a 97% customer satisfaction rating. Like those are numbers that they can look at and they can be like, okay, well, this person didn't just do anything. This is exactly how they like were able to quantify the results for that. And the biggest part is just showing the outcome. What did you do? What was the action that you take? And what was the result? If you have those three kind of knocked down, I'd say that you have a really strong resume and whatnot. So some additional resume tips is you want to make sure that your experiences are in reverse chronological order. So you want to have your newest experience first and then work backwards. Make sure that you're using the right tense for your resume. Having grammatical errors can kind of throw resumes off. So it's always great to have someone look over it, especially come to the CLE Career Services. So make sure you're using past tense for your previous jobs and then present tense for current jobs. Another big one is tailoring your resume to every position you apply for. Sometimes it may seem like a lot, but you don't just want to apply to any place that's hiring. You want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume to the industry or jobs that you're interested in working in. You're more likely to kind of get a call back from those places rather than just sending your resume to any place. And then using language from the job description. For me, like I'm interested in working in business and finance, so I like to use a lot of things that they look for. So like communication, Excel, some of those technical skills that are going to be common in those job positions, because you want to make sure that your skills and your experiences align with the job that you want to have. And then we'll get into cover letters.
Mara, thank you very much. Okay, cover letters, it would be the second part of the application. We encourage everyone to do a cover letter for every position which they apply. If you are actually uploading your resume to a site and there is a separate spot to upload a cover letter, that is fine. If there's only one spot, then the resume is page 1 and cover letter is page 2, because the applicant tracking system or the actually a recruiter is expecting to see a resume. If they see something other than a resume, they may completely ignore you. So let's look at why cover letters. To express an interest in a position or program and provide detailed examples of previous experiences or specific skills you've demonstrated in the past that would be useful in the position for which you are applying. It's a lot of words, but it allows you to go beyond the resume and use some of the language from the actual job description. You're presenting your qualifications, your personality. You're talking about the same words that are used in the job description. It can also serve as a writing sample and an example of your professional written communication skills, because in very, very many positions, that is an important part of the job. It's not just the way that you present yourself in person, but also how you present yourself in writing. So the basic structure, okay, you have the header and contact information, which is simply a cut paste from your executive, your resume. The introductory paragraph is really a thesis statement in which you are identifying the name of the organization, the position itself, where you heard about the position, and a couple of straight statements about your interest in that position. You then have 2 or 3 what they call body paragraphs. This is where you discuss your qualifications as it relates to the requirements for the position. Some job descriptions are very, very detail oriented, and you have to struggle a bit to figure out how much you want to go into detail. Other job descriptions are so general that you almost feel like you have to make up information to get across to the employer what it is that you have to offer. You have a concluding paragraph. I strongly believe that you should include your phone number and your email address at the bottom of that letter, even though you have it at the top. And the reason is that you want the recruiter, the employer, to be so enthralled with your background that they want to pick up the phone immediately and call you. And when I'm meeting with students, I ask the question, you get a phone call, you do not recognize the number, what do you do? And many students will say, I don't hang up. And my response is, you're not going to get a job. Because once that number is out there, you have to be a little bit more diligent about responding to inquiries. You're not going to pick up the phone during class. You're not going to pick up the phone when you're driving. You're not going to pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. But once you're phone number is out there on your resume and a cover letter for jobs, you have to be very responsive because the employer might not leave a message because that employer has 10 other people he can contact. He contacts the next person on his list. That person picks up the phone. That person gets the job or gets the internship that you would have gotten had you picked up your phone. So enough of that. And then at the very bottom is the signing off and the signature. Again, just as Mara said, you want to make sure that your resume is letter perfect and somebody has reviewed it or you have reviewed it in detail. You want to do the same with cover letter because this is another example of how you present yourself. And if it's sloppy, there's errors, punctuation, spelling, what have you, you probably will go not in the talk to pile, but in the dump in the wastebasket pile. The flow of your cover letter. It's first the introduction, why you're interested in the position. Yeah, again, in that first paragraph, you're mentioning the title for which you are applying and where you heard about it. Okay, it might have been on a company ad, it might have been through Handshake or something here at the university. But what is it about that position that really excites and interests you? We then go into the body paragraphs, and these are two or three that go into more detail about how you meet the qualifications spelled out in the job description. Directly connect your experience to the skills listed in the job posting. That's the body paragraph prompt there. And then the final paragraph is the conclusion in terms of why are you the person who should be. You know, we are here in Minnesota, and there is something known as Minnesota nice. I'm a New Yorker, so I can be nasty when it comes to New York nice, which is a contradiction in terms at times. But what you want to do is indicate what it is that you have to offer in a way that is enticing and encouraging for the reader of the letter. Next, your header. Again, as Mara said, it's really a cut and paste from your resume. The exact same format. If you're doing name and then contact information, that is simply put at the top because it's a package, a professional package. And the other thing, you've got the date, you've got the name and address of the organization, and then dear so-and-so. It is a business letter, so it's a colon after that person's name or hiring manager. It's not a comma. One of the most common mistakes that people make in that process. Okay, what do you include in the introductory paragraph? The specific job, we already talked about that. How you heard about the position, or if somebody referred you to that position, you might want to include that person's name in the cover letter, but then you have to make certain that that person whose name you used actually gets a copy of the cover letter, because the recipient of this letter might reach out to that referral, and that referral says, I have no idea who this Wetzel guy is, at which point you realize that your resume is going to go into the proverbial trash bucket. What interests you about the role is part of it, and it could be tied to your major. It could be tied to some of the experiences that you've already had. And why do you think you would be a good candidate for that position? Okay, you see the example here. I think I would be a great fit for this role because of my proven time management ability, my excellent blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I would use the word think. I would say, I believe I am. I would be. I am a great fit for this role. You have to think positively. Next is the body paragraphs. Expand on the various elements of the thesis, or really what it is that is part of the job description. Okay, my notes say it's easy to use AI on your cover letter. Fine, but is that how you talk in the interview? Is the hiring manager looking at this and bringing you in because of what you wrote in your cover letter? But once the person starts talking to, it's as though it's a whole different person. And on occasion, long before we had AI, I remember mentioning to a student, you didn't write this resume, did you? Somebody else did. Okay. So demonstrate evidence that you know a bit about the employer and their needs. I encourage people to talk about, is this a privately held company? Is it a Fortune 500 company? Is it a startup? Uh, is it a government entity? Is it an educational entity? So, what is it? It's not just the name of an organization, but do a little bit of research as you are creating your letter. You're going to have to do that research when you get into the interview. You might as well start the process off as quickly and as appropriately as possible. Offer a bit more detail than your resume shows. Okay. Again, some people will look at every word on the resume, others will glance at it. We want you to make certain that the key points of your resume are highlighted in your cover letter, but then, if possible, let's go into additional detail. So the example on the page, you can see we're using words that go right to the margin. We're filling up the page. We don't necessarily have to do that. The last thing we want, though, is to have a cover letter that's half a page. So you change margins and font sizes and what have you to be able to fill it. The conclusion paragraph, reiterate why you're interested in the position, illustrate your thesis and why you would like to be a good fit. Thank the reader for the time. As I said, I really encourage people to put their phone number and their email address as the last sentence before your complimentary closing and your signature. And then the sign-off signature, okay? You can decide what that sign-off signature is, but basically it's your name. Tailoring your materials, okay. So let's look at some of the things that we would do here. Okay, T-chart. I'm sure most of you are familiar with T-charts. It's an example of what is the employer looking for and what is it that you have to offer. So one of the things that they might be looking for is digital literacy. And you can give, as an example, develop a website for a nonprofit organization. Okay. That is on the resume, the nonprofit organization and the work that you did there. But in the cover letter, we're actually calling attention to that because digital literacy is one of the requirements for the position. Applied problem solving, okay? Initiated fundraising campaign to raise money for a band trip. How much? Quantify wherever possible. Citizenship and community engagement. Volunteer at annual food drive, quantify, okay, how many times did you volunteer? How much money was raised? Numbers speak louder than words. So I'm encouraging that both on resumes and in cover letters. If you can quantify, do so as much as possible. Next, we're going to talk about gathering information. Okay. So part of it is the list of the job responsibilities and the tasks that are required for the role. Okay. You can get that hopefully from the job description, or maybe you can go into the company website and find some more information about the job description other than what you saw wherever you saw it advertised. There are required and preferred skills and qualifications. You definitely want to make sure that you've got all of the required skills before you spend time applying to a position and doing the cover letter and what have you. Because if you don't have all the required ones, it's very unlikely that they're going to interview you. And you would better spend your time on positions where you do have the required ones. Preferred ones are that, preferred, not necessary, but more of the preferred that you have, the more likely it is that you're going to get contacted for an interview. Doing some research about the organization, mission, values, culture. What is the organization doing? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a startup? What field are they in? Are they in communication? Is it in advertising? And then you want to obviously look at their website and be familiar with the website of the organization, and then any other kinds of social media, news, internal contacts, and what have you. And the next, I think, is our questions and answers. Oops, went back too fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mara is back here,
Mhm.
and we are now going to be able to answer questions that people have.
Yeah.
And
So feel free to put those in the Q&A chat. We can answer questions that you have about resumes, cover letters, anything else career related. So yeah, feel free to put those questions there.
can people ask questions live?
I don't think so. Um, what is your biggest
This
tip?
tip for curating your resume and cover letter to work with ATS.
I could take that one. I
Okay.
would say the biggest thing is the ATS is really kind of like a first screening. So I would say sometimes you kind of had to add you'll have to add like buzzwords and like jargon.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I know like if you're a CS major, projects experience is optimized for like a project section or whatever. Or like if you're interested in finance, having stuff like Excel, financial modeling, market research, things like that that are common and used in the industry are good to add to your skills section. And throughout your resume, once again, don't lie, make sure you have experience to back this
Mm-hmm.
up. But
Mm-hmm.
adding things like that within your resume kind of optimizes it for the ATS. And so, yeah, I would just make sure, look through the description for these jobs, pick up a couple of words or phrases that you notice is common amongst them, and then find ways that you use that throughout your resume and kind of use those buzzwords to describe your experience. Because a lot of them are honestly, they're common across so many different industries. So if you just add that onto there, I feel like that works pretty well for the ATS.
You also have to realize that in addition to the ATS screening process, you also have the individual situation. Again, we don't know what percentage of employers actually read the cover letter and or read the resume, but that's why I strongly encourage, as I mentioned earlier, a cover letter with every single position for which you posted because you've gone above and beyond. The example I often use with students when I'm meeting with them is an employer receives responses from 50 candidates. 48 of them send in a resume, two of them send in a resume and a cover letter. Where do you think the employer is going to start? You know, the answer is the two. Why? Because they went above and beyond in the application process. And if they went above and beyond in the application process, it's very possible they will go above and beyond on the job. So in situations like that, the two who sent in the cover letters may be the only two who are interviewed, and the other 48 people are quote unquote trashed. So, and what level of proficiency efficiency would I put a second language on a resume? Again, I encourage people to do whatever they want. Oftentimes, if you're a single language speaker, obviously you don't put language on there. But normally you would list your native language first and fluency, and then whatever the second language or third language is. I worked with students who had 5 different languages on their resume,
Mhm.
okay? And three of them were literally where they were fluent in those.
Mhm.
Um, it usually is one of the last things that's on a resume. But again, I learned a long time ago that first and last are important positions, especially let's say you've got 5 or 6 bullets, and people will always look at the first one, possibly the second one, and they jump down to the bottom. I'm the oldest of 6 sons. Okay. So I got a lot of attention. My youngest brother got a lot of attention. And then you have those well adjusted or neglected middle children, whichever,
Mhm.
however you want to approach it. But really think about providing as much information as you possibly can.
Yeah. Just to kind of summarize that, I'd say like having a second language is always going to be an asset for you. So whether that's like Spanish, beginner, intermediate, advanced, at whatever level, being able to speak a little bit of another language is always going to give you a boost because there's so many people who just speak one language. So yeah, I don't think you're required to at least be like intermediate or like advanced to add a language. Good question.
Any other questions again about resumes, cover letters? While we're waiting for those questions, I'm going to put a plug in for CLA Career Services and the work that Mara and I do.
Mhm.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're in Brunex Hall, 411, sexiest building on campus, and come and see the view. But we work with students on some topics as resumes, cover letters, applying for jobs, applying to graduate school. A lot of our time is spent in the fall semester and early spring semester as people are making plans for graduate school. Um, we have a number of career fairs. CLA has one every fall, and then there's the university-wide one in February. Um, we've had a number of employers coming into our office either during the lunch hour or later in the day, talking about the opportunities within their organization or their career field. Another question, would CLA Career Services be useful to someone not in CLA, or should they go to their own college's services? Okay, great question. There are students who obviously are involved in two colleges, so their major may be one college and a minor in the other. Um, uh,
Um,
everybody else black your ears. Okay,
yeah,
I would be happy to meet with anyone. Um,
I think to schedule an appointment, you might be required to be a
right,
CLA
yes.
student, but also like our career services website is open. There's no like paywall to be a CLA student. So if you find resources on our website that are helpful to you, totally feel free to use that. I think the biggest thing is like we just want to prioritize CLA students since this is kind of curated to, we have like a business and technology, we have arts and humanities, we have we have career coaches that specialize in different industries.
Mhm.
And so we have that variety because CLA has the most majors, the most variety in majors. So I'm not sure if you would be able to schedule an appointment as a non-CLA major, but definitely feel free to use the resources on our website. At the end, we want to see every student that's at the U be successful. So you definitely aren't limited to not use the resources that we have.
And our office is open most days between 11 and 3.
Mhm.
So students can stop in, meet with a peer coach,
Yep.
or uh, a career coach is available, we certainly could do that. But usually we try to schedule appointments with the career coaches.
Mhm.
How do you recommend finding entry-level positions?
I would say Handshake is a really good resource. Like employers are on there to find undergraduate students, to find interns, to find new grads. So I would say that should be your top resource if you're looking for jobs or entry level positions. I would say, uh,
Employment.umn.edu,
yeah,
because the university is always looking for employees. And,
yeah.
a job is a job. It doesn't have to be, outside the university. You certainly could have all different kinds of roles
Hmm.
here on campus.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
that's totally fine. I think that's also a good, internally you could definitely have that like leg up if you're if you're a U of M student. But I would just say Handshake is like number one for students because it's a job resource for students. LinkedIn is cool. Honestly, I kind of use that and apply directly on their website. There's a ton of different resources, but yeah, definitely keep your eye open on Handshake in places like LinkedIn. Sometimes you have to go and apply externally, so definitely make sure you do that. But
and then
um,
I also recommend Indeed as a site.
yeah,
And I would encourage you, once you have a resume, to upload it to those three sites, Handshake, LinkedIn, and Indeed, because there are what I call savvy employers. Excuse me, savvy employers are the ones who realize once they post a job, they're often inundated by people who are not qualified.
mhm,
So they will look to see whose resumes are online
yeah,
and will reach out to those students. You want to play both ends against the middle. So you want to upload your resume so that the savvy employers will see you, but you also want to apply for the positions posted by the not so savvy employers and the savvy employers who might not have seen your resume the first time around. So
yeah. That's definitely a good point. literally found out about an opportunity and was able to go to New York for free from someone messaging me on Handshake. And that's because I had my like Handshake profile optimized. I had my resume on there, applied for the program. And so it's just like kind of one of those things where it's like, you want to use any platform or any resource like strategically. And that starts with like having a solid resume, making sure that you're optimizing like your Handshake and your LinkedIn profiles. And then honestly, employers will kind of fly to you. The next question is, does Handshake Access go away after we graduate? I'm actually not sure.
I'm not sure either, but I don't think it does. I think, you could,
Actually,
uh,
it doesn't. I've seen alumni on there.
have
I
you?
think,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't think you have to be a student at the university
Hmm.
to get onto Handshake. It's available to all kinds of other groups of individuals. So
Hmm.
I would say, but that does raise a point, and this is something that has been um, increasing considerably, uh, that you will lose your U of M email address within the first year of graduation. So that's why Amara mentioned earlier about possibly putting your personal Gmail
Hmm.
account on your resume, especially if you're a junior or a senior.
Yeah, and especially when you graduate, we have the maroon and gold like alumni resource. So definitely tap into that. I feel like that like a lot of Gophers and alumni are always willing to help their like alma mater. So
Mhm.
using those resources and trying to that's also a good resource besides like Handshake once you graduate.
Any other questions? Great questions, though, weren't they?
Yeah, we have
Fantastic.
good ones.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, I first want to give a round of applause to Mara for her outstanding present. Oh, here we go. Is the UMN handshake account we're given special, or will making a handshake
Um,
after our account expires? I mean, for the jobs available.
I
Okay.
think there are some that are posted, maybe. Honestly, I'm not too sure. I would follow up with that. I will say that I know our U of M account gives us access to Handshake. Some of those roles might be posted by U of M people because I know there's a way you can filter out search to like the university
Mhm.
network, but I don't think it necessarily disappears after you graduate. But again, I would definitely like email the CLA Career Services to kind of double check on that because I'm not sure on the specifics, to be honest. So in the chat. Okay, Megan. Yeah, we have
What
a
was that?
few more
What
minutes
was that
here.
question? What was your favorite? Go
Oh,
back
that
to.
was Megan. So like your favorite resume tips or
Oh, okay.
tricks.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Honestly, a resume trick that I do or tip, um, I add like a hobby section because I feel like sometimes resumes, it's very like career focused. And I feel
Mhm.
like that kind of helps me stand out as a
Mhm.
candidate because it
Mhm.
personalizes it more. And you have
Mhm.
to remember, people who are looking at your resumes are also people. So I have pretty general hobbies. And so if they see, oh, this person has the same thing that I like, I also like reading, I also like photography, they might resonate with that a little bit more than someone who just has other professional experiences. So that's like one thing that I do just to personalize my resume a bit.
Well, I want to thank each one of you for being with us today.
Mhm.
Invite you to not be a stranger in the sexiest building on campus, Brunix Hall, 411. So Mara and her peer coach colleagues are here, and my colleagues are also here who
Yeah.
are the career coaches. So do not hesitate. You have access to our services for up to a year after you graduate.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah, peer coaches can take drop-ins from 11 to 3 Monday through Friday. So if you're free in between classes, you just have questions, want someone to look over your resume for a little bit, definitely come in. I think it's underutilized by students because, your tuition's going towards it. So definitely make sure that you maximize these resources.
and it's also a great opportunity for students to be one of our peer
For sure, for
I
sure.
think we have,
I think the application closed on Sunday.
yeah, that's right.
Mm.
So we're in the process now of selecting for next year.
Yep.
And you're coming back, right?
Yes.
Good. Okay, excellent. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the wonderful weather that we will have today. It will change to wet and maybe white tomorrow and Sunday, and then back again to whatever Minnesota has to offer. Remember, we have April Fool's Day coming up in a couple of days, so be prepared for that.